All over the UK, thousands of historic buildings lie forgotten and neglected, often tangled up with red tape or abandoned by owners who cannot afford the repairs. Some of these are in danger of being lost forever.
You sit there at home and you look at the TV and you think, I could do that.
I dream about the house every night.
It definitely took a lot of blood, sweat and tears to get the planning permission.
Every building has its own unique history, which I hope to uncover, that will help guide and inspire these intrepid restorers. When you take on a listed building, you're taking on a responsibility. You become its guardian to pass on to future generations. As an architect, I'm passionate about our architectural heritage, and I want to help these restoration warriors on their journeys as they reclaim, recycle and make these buildings useful again. I've come to the picturesque Cumbrian village of Gamblesby. Set in the North Pennines, this village was once part of the Anglican Church's fight against the rise in popularity of Methodism in Victorian Britain. And it was this church that was at the vanguard of that fight. Built in 1868 and called St. John's, it's a mixture of architectural styles and is loosely based on the Victorian Gothic revival. For over a century it served its parish, but for the last 8 years it's lain empty after the church failed to find a community use for it. Put up for sale with residential planning permission, it was bought by Phil Evans and Joanne McGurr, who have a vision to restore this abandoned Victorian building into their dream home.
We decided to come and see it because we've seen it advertised on the internet, and then as soon as we drove into the village we really loved it.
You sit there at home and you look at the TV and you think, I could do that. We've taken a beautiful building. We want to bring it into the 21st century and make sure that it's, you know, that the job that we do secures it for another 100 years.
I think it was such a unique opportunity to make a dream house.
We can bring the building back to life. You know, we can make our dream come true, really.
31-year-old Phil Evans is a part-time university academic researcher. The family live 80 miles away, and Phil regularly travels to China to sell scientific glass products, which can keep him away from home for weeks at a time. Joanne, also 31, is an accounts manager, but is currently on maternity leave with 3-month-old Hattie. While Phil and Joanne have done up properties before, they've never tackled a restoration of this size. They bought the church for £128,000, which they raised by increasing their mortgage on their home in Chorley, Lancashire. Although they have planning permission, as the church is a Grade 2 listed building, they've taken a big gamble, buying it without having a structural survey on the roof and spire. With no equity left in their house, they've secured an £86,000 self-build mortgage, which they can only access once they've made the building wind and watertight. But to do this, they've taken out a high-interest personal loan of £25,000 to kickstart the build. I love the architecture of churches and the interesting spaces they provide for residential conversion. I also like the challenge of doing something interesting with a spire.
Hi, Mr. Joanne, nice to meet you. How are you?
How you doing?
Are you well?
Good, thank
How's
you.
things? Hello, mate, how are you? Where are you from? You all right? Tell me a little bit about what you've bought.
Victorian period, Grade 2 listed. For me, I think it's just an absolutely beautiful building. We're really passionate about Victorian architecture in particular. And I think, whilst it's not, you know, the most decorative sort of church you've ever seen, it captures, you know, nice aspects of that sort of architecture in that period.
The village setting as well as the building. So the building's really important, but also there's gorgeous buildings everywhere, but it's being part of a community in a village.
When we saw this place, it was just, you know, there was no question that it's just perfect.
Before the project has even started, Phil and Joanne have to make an important decision. With both of them living and working over 80 miles away in Chorley, they've chosen to remain in their house while the build is going on. But they need someone to oversee the project.
I'm excited.
They've decided that their future brother-in-law, Alex, will project manage the whole restoration. Although Alex is trained as an architect, he's new to the business of overseeing an on-site building project.
Otherwise it'll tip on you.
He's going to live in a caravan next to the church.
Ah, my new home.
I
you've picked the perfect time of year to start the building project. You know, just kind of coming up towards October, the dark nights, the miserable weather.
Exactly.
And you're going to move into a caravan through the entire winter. Yeah. You couldn't have planned it better.
The church is a Grade 2 listed building that comes with restrictive planning and building permission. With its 52-foot high spire, a footprint of over 1,100 square feet, and a ground area of just over 1/3 of an acre, with no complications of a graveyard, this building is full of potential. It's estimated that on average, around 20 Anglican churches are closed for worship every year. And if an alternative use can be found, they are then deconsecrated. Once St. John's was declared redundant, the bishop directed that the altar should be burnt and the font broken up and buried, so they couldn't be used for non-Christian purposes.
Well, here we are.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Oh, incredible. God, it's a brilliant space, actually. Really lovely. You're going to keep this, yeah?
Going to keep that, yeah.
Just make demands to the kids. Stop doing that. And stop doing that as well. This area is absolutely stunning. I mean, the fact that you've got this beautiful curve right at the end of the bed. It's quite unusual, actually. You know, there's not that many churches have got this.
Not, yeah, with the
Not
curves.
that many. So what are the roles and responsibilities? Who's doing what on the build? How's it going to work?
Pretty much we've got Alex here, project managing on a day-to-day, trying to work with the builders to best utilise their time and their abilities.
I'm pretty much going to be filling Joanne's eyes on site. I need to be able to make certain decisions, you know, with them not being here.
But do you have any idea how much this is going to cost you?
The basic building, 100,000.
100,000. That's you said there's some contingency in there. Is that with contingency?
No, that's without contingency.
So what? You got 120?
About that bit more, yeah.
120.
But that's more finished, isn't it?
No. That's that. We've got a separate contingency, and we've got that's to get to the basic building. We've then got a further about 25 to actually then do it. You know, kitchens and those sorts of things as well.
So your budget is 125 grand, plus a contingency of
about 20.
10, 20. Okay. So you're 145.
Yeah, but no, we're 125. We're going to bring in on budget.
Is this going to be the first restoration project I ever see where the contingency money is never spent?
Yes.
Yeah.
How big a risk is it, really?
It's everything. During this transition period, we will be mortgaged and loaned to the hilt. It's all the equity we've built up for all the work that we've done over the last 12 years together. And if something goes wrong, you know, that's it. We lose everything.
Phil and Joanne say that their design to convert the church into a dream home came about over a couple of glasses of wine. The plans were then drawn up by Alex. On the ground floor, there'll be a large hallway that leads onto a study, WC and cloakroom. This will lead onto a generous space that will be the main living area that will include a double-height dining room, store and a kitchen in the church's nave. On the first floor, there'll be a master bedroom with ensuite, plus 2 further bedrooms that have their own separate bathrooms.
I think the ground floor is spot on. Upstairs, there's a couple of things. You probably can't make the master bedroom bigger because of the way the beams are. I don't know, but I'm assuming that's why you've done it.
That's exactly it.
But it feels really small. The dimension on there is 2.8 metres wide, and because it's quite a deep space, it's going to feel very kind of narrow and quite confined.
Now that we've had a proper look at the spire, maybe we utilise some of the spire to create, I don't know, an upstairs library or, you know, like a chill-out area above the bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a small space can feel bigger if you do something with the ceiling. If you lift the ceiling up, a small room can have a bigger drama to it. So you're right, you've got the spire above. If you put a little staircase up to there, or you put glass in there, or do something to get light from the spire down into that space, it's good. I always make, with smaller bedrooms, to make them bigger, I normally lift the ceiling higher. It's as simple as that.
It was good to get a sort of fresh opinion from an architect.
Talking to George helped bring the building into a livable thing, and sort of talking through the size of the rooms and where the step is going to be. It just is able to visualise it more.
A couple of things he mentioned that were sort of new ways to tackle the problem, so we're certainly going to take those on board and have a look inside the church and just see what is possible.
This couple have just taken on an unbelievable amount. Seriously, they've put everything on the line financially, in terms of their time, and actually in terms of their quality of life for the next 7 or 8 months. And they've put so much trust in Alex to deliver this for them. I actually think, to be honest, it could be too much for him. I hope it's not, but with all the terrible weather that's going to come in this part of the world over the next 5-6 months, and the building being in the condition it's in, I'm just worried that it's going to be too much.
In 2010, Phil Evans and Joanne McGurr bought this 19th century church in the Cumbrian village of Gamblesby. With a restoration budget of £125,000, they hope to get an £86,000 self-build mortgage, which will release funds at certain stages of the build. However, they've not yet been granted the mortgage, so they've started the project with a high-interest loan of £25,000. To save money, they've taken on future brother-in-law Alex to project manage the build. But my earlier concerns about their inexperience are proving true when I visit site and find they've stripped the roof without giving any thought to the weather.
Seriously, mate, I'd get some tarpaulin up there as quick as you can. Because if the lads are taking that side off tomorrow, like they said they were going to be...
Yeah.
I mean, look, even the builders would be like, look, it can get wet a bit, it's fine, it'll dry out. It's not great from your point of view if you're going to have damp in there in 6-7 months' time.
Good point, yeah, it's a good point.
This is a classic example of what you shouldn't really be doing on a build. The weather is going to have a massive impact on this project. And because of costs, they haven't built a big tin roof, a big protector over the top of the church before they strip back the old tiles. They strip the tiles off, and now the water is absolutely flooding in, which means all the pews, this amazing rickety organ and everything, it's just getting absolutely knackered. It's not good.
Having finally taken on my advice, Alex springs into action.
Ah, brilliant. That's really good. Thank you. So it's three rolls, 25 by 4 meters, that clear plastic. Right, so basically what we're doing, we're getting sheets of heavy-duty plastic, basically, and we're going to try and cover up the whole of the exposed bits of roof, just to try and keep it dry, basically. And then what we'll do is wrap some around the spire as well, just to try and keep it dry, basically.
With Alex at last organising the weatherproofing, Phil takes me up to see the spire. But once up there, I find that his problems are more than just a few sheets of tarpaulin.
Phil, this spire's bust, to say the least, isn't it? Oh, yep. My God. Actually, it's worse than I thought.
Yeah.
That's a 100-odd-year-old solid oak.
As we peeled it back, we realised that this side must have basically taken the brunt of the weathering, and the whole side is shot.
What are you going to do?
What are we going to do? Well, we're still weighing up the options.
Get someone like a good engineer to check it out, to really look at the temporary supports and what it's going to need, because that's going to be really well designed. The last thing you want is to pull out some of these supports and the whole thing goes. That'd be a disaster for everything.
I'm really concerned that Phil's £25,000 high-interest loan to fix the roof and spire, which will then release the much-needed self-build mortgage, is not going to be enough. If the money runs out, this build will grind to a halt.
Although St John's is a humble rural church, all buildings have a history, and I'm intrigued to see why it's been deconsecrated in the first place and planning permission granted to turn it into a home. Now, local records show that Phil and Joanne's church was built in the middle of Gamblesby in 1868. But what I can't quite understand is the mother church for the area, which is St Michael's Church, where there's been a church on the site since the 11th century, is only 2 miles away. With such a small rural population, I can't understand why they built another church so close.
I'm hoping the style of Gothic Revival architecture will give us a clue. The classic hallmarks are the lancet windows, the spire, and buttresses, which help support the walls. This architecture is a throwback to the Church of England's medieval roots and was a reaction to a time of uncertainty, when the established Church of England was under threat from the new faiths such as Methodism, which were popping up all over the country, trying to cater for the new urban masses of the Industrial Revolution.
And just looking at this old Ordnance Survey map of Gamblesby, the mystery of St John's Church is beginning to unravel.
Just 50 yards away from St John's is a site where John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, built a chapel in 1784. When this humble building was expanded nearly 80 years later, the local vicar felt compelled to respond by building our church.
So it looks like our Gothic Revival church was built by the Church of England to rival its neighbouring impostor.
To find out how the Church of England reacted to the threat of these new faiths, I've come to Oxford, the 19th century centre of the Anglican faith, to see one of the finest examples of Gothic Revival architecture, which was built just 9 years before our church in Gamblesby.
What an unbelievable building. It is so stunningly designed, finished around 1859 by one of the best Gothic Revival architects, George Gilbert Scott. This was one of many churches built through the boom time of 19th century church construction. The Anglican Church was feeling threatened by other religions like Methodism. Buildings like this reasserted the Anglican authority.
A leading expert in ecclesiastical architecture is Oxford University's Professor Dermot McCulloch.
It's such a powerful, strong architecture, isn't it, Dermot?
Well, yes, I mean, it's trying to make a statement. The Church of England is the big beast on the block. There are other churches around, but this is the business, and this is the church which has inherited medieval architecture. But, I mean, Catholics, the free churches, the Methodists, they're all now competitors, and the Church of England wants to say, no, we are still the Church of the nation.
And how much would a building like this have cost back in 1859?
Well, I happen to know that Exeter College Chapel was £15,000.
£15,000
in their money, of course.
It must be one of George Gilbert Scott's best.
Yes, just so magnificent Victorian self-confidence, isn't it? We have to say that all the other churches were hugely raising money at the time for their churches.
And that's why there was this enormous building boom, I suppose, of the 19th century.
Yeah.
And it just shows how this architecture really worked. You can see where the money was spent.
This is really the Church of England at its most triumphal.
It's winter, and things are not so triumphal at our church. Although Phil and Joanne have finally got their mortgage of £86,000, Gamblesby has been hit with some of the heaviest snow in years. The crane that's been ordered to lift the renovated spire to the top of the tower can't get through the blocked road. And if that's not bad enough, when Phil came back from a trip to China, he found out that the new spire and roof has cost an estimated £40,000, which is £15,000 over what he budgeted for.
How much have you spent?
If I pay all the bills,
To date?
to date, 75,000, maybe 80,000. Obviously there's things happening today, you know, things constantly happening, but yeah, 75,000.
You're 80 grand, 75 to 80 grand in already.
Yes. This spire has knocked us back and taken up a good chunk of the budget. No, well, it's taken up all the contingency and it's eaten into other bits of the budget now.
You haven't got the roof finished yet, the slate's not even on, the spire's not even on. You've got to do electrics, plumbing, God knows whatever else.
Yep.
Fitting floors, the lot. And I'll tell you the brutal honest truth, 40 grand ain't going to do it.
No.
What are you worried about?
Possibly running out of money. I think we are going to run out of money. It's how far we get.
How long are you away over the next 3 or 4 months?
I could easily be probably 2 to 3 weeks a month.
2 to 3 weeks a month over the next 3 or 4 months?
Possibly. That would be the worst case, but that's what, you know, that's what it could be.
So when I'm standing here going, you should be here, it ain't going to happen?
And not unless I can jump in a plane and fly 6,000 miles, no.
Can you not send somebody else?
No.
Although things look really bleak, Phil's pushing ahead. And with the support of his neighbours, they're attempting to get the spire in its rightful place.
Brilliant, it's all happening. We've got gritters, everyone clearing cars out the way, gear out the way, roof turning up. What I love about it, it's like all the community, from the farmer next door to the gritter guys to the crane guys, everybody has come together to make this work for the crane today. That's how big a deal it is.
The crane has finally got through, but they're now racing against the clock as there are only 3 hours of daylight left. The first job is to assemble the frame that the church spire will sit on, and that's taken longer than expected.
Well, that's it. Go for it. Yeah, we're going.
I don't think we're going to get it on today.
We'll get this on. Get this on, definitely. You've got another hour and a half, you'll get this.
This is a really complicated part of the project that has to be right, but there's not much time.
Excellent, well done. Bloody brilliant. So we're now at about 3:20. It's actually a bit lighter than I thought it would have been at this time. We're going to try and lift the spire on top of the frame, peg it out and mark it, lift it off again, put the frame in place, lift the spire on top, before the sun completely disappears. No chance. I'm all for a bit of optimism, but being a bit delusional doesn't really work on a building site.
In 2010, Phil Evans and Joanne McGurr bought this 19th century church in the Cumbrian village of Gamblesby. Originally, they budgeted £125,000 to complete the project. But finding that the spire was completely rotten and needed replacing, and having to compete with some of the worst weather in years, has put them seriously behind schedule. The crane is lifting the new spire into place, but the pressure's on as the daylight is fading. The lift has to be done in 2 stages. First, there's the 4-ton frame, which provides the support. Then, the spire is lifted and rests on top.
Actually, we can rotate it as well slightly to get it past the purlins. Let me just cut some more off it.
But there's a problem. Pete and Alex have miscalculated the measurements, and it's all looking too tight.
That's it, go on. Pull, that's 2 inches. Go on, that's it. And over, that's it. You tight that edge? You tight? Yeah, you're clear. You're really tight the side again, you know, Phil.
One false move and the end gable of the church could come down. The daylight is nearly gone and a big decision has to be made.
We're at a stage now where it's so late, it's so dark, and well, the temperature's dropped massively. We've got the main bit of the frame up on the top, which is fantastic that it fits. Ideally, we'd love to get the whole spire up and drop that on as well. I think it's too dangerous, to be honest.
Early next morning, with temperatures below 0 and another day's crane hire to pay for, Phil and his crew are back hard at it. Weighing in at over a tonne, the renovated oak spire is carefully lifted into place. Finally, after nearly 140 years, the church can boast a brand new spire, but it's come at an enormous price. In the new year, back home in Chorley, Phil and Joanne are really struggling with their budget.
We got the 30,000 as the next instalment. We still had about 3,000 left on that.
And that's to get to first fix?
That's to get to the first fix, but we had bills outstanding anyway, so we had to cover...
Their self-billed mortgage has come up with a second stage payment of £34,000. But with the spire going way over the original budget, they're facing huge financial problems.
Well, the spire took a lot of last stage payments amount, which meant that we didn't get as much done, which means we've got a limited amount this time to get to the next stage as well. So it's just all having a knock-on effect, isn't it?
We're together now. We're having to basically plan, really strictly plan forward now, work, so that we only have the right people on site to get us to our next milestone, which is first fix.
With Phil and Joanne wrestling with their finances, I'm interested to find out how St John's was originally funded. Many of the Church of England archives are held here at Lambeth Palace in London. In 1836, an ecclesiastical commission was set up to administer all applications for new church property. So St John's would have gone through this process. The Methodist chapel in Gamblesby was enlarged in 1864. This encouraged the local Anglicans, headed by a Reverend Edward Brown, to appeal to the commissioners for funding for a new chapel of ease, so locals didn't have to walk the 2 miles to St Michael's. On 2 occasions, the financially stretched commissioners rejected the appeal for funding. This forced Reverend Brown to look elsewhere.
This incredible document here seems to be a deed, which shows, in effect, the transfer of land from the Duke of Devonshire back over to what I think would just be the parish, really. So this deed is made on the 28th day of July, 1866, between the most noble William Duke of Devonshire, of the one part, and the Reverend Edward Brown, Vicar of Addingham in the county of Cumberland.
Having the good fortune to get the deeds to the land for nothing, the local vicar set about trying to raise the funds to build his church.
So if we look at the Diocese of Carlisle, here we have Addingham, St John, Gamblesby. Finished cost of building, £1,075 and 19 shillings. From what sources were these funds derived? Voluntary contributions.
To raise £1,075 was a massive amount in those days, and although not in the same league as Exeter College, Oxford, it does show the passion and commitment local people had to protect their faith.
After all of that snow and that freezing cold weather before Christmas, we've now got this howling wind and tons of rain.
Back on site, I'm gobsmacked that they still haven't made the building wind and watertight.
Morning.
Hey,
How are you? It's always good to see the boss back on site.
Thank you.
And with a little labourer as well.
Absolutely.
Hello, mate. How are you?
all right.
It's great, actually. You're starting to get a feel for the proportion of the spaces, don't you?
Yes.
You really
And how
do,
it's
yeah.
all going to work.
And how then when you come, you know, this space is absolutely fantastic.
Excellent. All the stud work going on upstairs. You've got all the insulation in. You're starting to batten out up there as well, which is great. You're right. It's starting to feel, I wouldn't quite call it a home yet, but you're starting to understand. You're starting to understand the proportions of the rooms, though, aren't you?
Yes.
About your ceiling heights and the scale of rooms and how it's all starting to come together.
And how it's going to work, how we're going to use the space. It's really good.
And wind and watertight. Yes.
Almost, yeah.
Almost.
Well,
Still not. Still not.
Just a little bit of water coming in, which is causing us a few internal leaks, but that's because we haven't got the ridge tiles and the water's getting in.
So you need to get that roof finished ASAP.
Yes,
Because there's no point in you doing all this finishing internal work.
By far, that stands out. That's the critical pass is the roof.
Yeah, the weather hasn't done you any favours, has it?
None.
At all, to be honest.
It's the fitting out upstairs that I'm really interested in. I want to see if Phil and Joanna have taken my advice about the size of the bedrooms.
Getting into your master bedroom, yeah?
Up
Yep.
through the bath.
Bizarre, but the safest at the moment. So
So this is your ensuite, is that right? In this
is
space?
the ensuite for the master, yeah.
And then this is your master bed space,
This is the master bed space.
which is possibly the smallest room in the entire house. But then you look up, and that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Absolutely unbelievable. Will you be able to see all the way up to the top?
Yeah,
When it's
you
done?
are. Yes,
That's
yes.
fantastic, man.
And the big glass along the it.
That is brilliant. Well, glass up in those rectangular sections there.
We took on board what you said, and we're going to create a mezzanine floor
Mezzanine area.
halfway here, so you could actually sit and read and take a look out at the view as well. So,
Brilliant.
So in spite of being the smallest room on plan, it's probably going to be the most interesting
Oh,
master
no,
bedroom
it's-
in the county of Cumbria, probably.
Absolutely. I mean, that is so three-dimensionally dramatic.
With the build moving on, I want to find out from Phil and Alex how the finances are shaping up.
All right, numbers.
Yep.
You've got to talk money.
Yep.
You know how much I love this bit and how much you hate this bit.
I hate this bit.
Your original budget was the dreaded 125k.
Yes.
Original budget. What have you spent so far to date?
To date, everything we've got here now, £95,000.
95 grand you spent?
Yes.
That's everything in, everything on site?
Everything on site,
all labour, all materials?
Yep, everything.
The lot?
Yep.
That's pretty good. Have you readjusted your cost plan to face the reality of what's left to do on the build? Or are you telling me you're going to do everything else for 30 grand that's left?
I'm going to try my best to do everything else for 30 grand.
Phil's confidence in his completion figure is hugely optimistic, so I'll make him and Alex work out exactly what's needed to finish the build.
33, 34, 34 and a half. Let's say it's 35 grand, just for argument's sake, because it keeps the maths easier. That means you'll have brought the whole lot in for 130k. Everything.
Yep.
Finished. If you do all this for 135 grand, I'll send you a case of champagne. I'm still unbelievably frustrated about so many things on this building project. The fact that it's still not wind and watertight is frankly ridiculous. And they're putting all these new building materials inside which are being damaged because there's still water coming in through that very unfinished roof. There is a chance that it's starting to turn a little corner. There's a chink of light at the end of the tunnel because the budget, there's still a bit of money there and the boys seem to be project managing better than they have before. The risk for them now is there enough money left to finish the entire project?
In 2010, Phil Evans and Joanne McGurr bought this 19th century church in the village of Gamblesby in Cumbria. With a projected budget of £125,000 to complete the build, their vision is to turn this church into a dream home. They've been hit by the harshest weather for years, faced a whole winter with very few tiles on the roof, and discovered that their spire needed replacing. It's put Phil and Joanne under huge financial pressure. After nearly a year of restoration, some things have changed. Phil is now spending 3 weeks out of 4 working in China, and because they need the money, Joanne has gone back to work.
Morning, you. I haven't seen you for ages.
Good to see you.
You well?
Good.
Good. So what's going on with the money?
Yeah, we had to get some additional lending.
Ouch. How much?
Another 25. I think it was mainly the contingency and the spire, and that's what everybody's, you know, oh, like when you come up in the spire, it's the first thing you see. For us, is we just see it in figures, dollars and pounds, and it's like, oh. So,
how much did the spire cost? Was
35.
35,000. The extra money that you borrowed,
Yeah.
25 grand, is
Yeah.
that an extension of your mortgage? Is it a loan?
It's a loan.
It's a loan. Shit. That's higher interest rates.
Yeah.
That's a bigger burden.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't give you it on the mortgage.
No.
It's not a small amount of money.
Okay, George.
Well, it's not though, is it?
I know. But what can we do? We can't recoup it back from anywhere else. We can't invest any more time in the property to do any more ourselves. Because we need to continue to work to fund it, so it was the lesser of two evils. Either we stop and we do it at weekends ourselves, or we get it to a point that's finished and move in and start paying it back that way.
Why can't you just extend the mortgage at a lower interest rate?
Yeah, it's not something we can do on the property.
Because it's not habitable yet.
Yeah.
That's the bugger, isn't it?
That's the one.
The bank will only lend or extend when it's deemed as being a habitable home, otherwise it's too much of a risk for them.
That's right. And how do you get to that point if they won't lend?
You're stuck where you are, you can't get rid of your house, you can't rent it out. So you can't release some of the equity you've got in there.
No.
And you've got a mortgage and a loan on this, which you can't move into because it's not safe.
So there's nothing really else we could do?
The build so far looks fantastic, but the pressure that Phil and Joanne have put each other under, borrowing that extra money as a loan, is just incredible. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Restoration's not for the faint-hearted.
Joanne is now managing the budget on her own, while juggling her full-time job. She's decided to sell the 16 pews that came with the church at a local auction. But when we arrive, I notice they're not looking as good as they should.
Problem is, when they stripped the roof off, and the roof was leaking and leaking and leaking and leaking with water coming in everywhere, some of them have got water damaged as well, which means we're going to get even less money, which is even more annoying because it's more of a waste.
Right then, 517 is the first of the church pews. Mr. Scott points to it, the one at the front here. 24, 26, 38 pounds.
Just a bit annoying because if every single one of these were cleaned up with the standard that way.
I'm spitting feathers, just don't even say it anymore because I'm about to blow a gasket about them wiggling.
And I've 20 bids.
This is you.
I've 22 bid for the lot there, then it's £22. On my right at £22.
By the end of the auction, all the pews are sold, but for only £457. Joanne is not happy. She calls Phil to give him the bad news.
We're just at the auction now. We've just sold all the pews. Yeah,
All of them, yeah.
they didn't go for as high as we wanted. The auctioneer and various people have said, you know, if they had been a bit cleaner, they probably would have went for more. They would have expected them to get more.
Joanne and Phil are just under massive financial pressure now. They've got to make every single penny count, and they need to make as much cash as possible between now and the end of the build. The biggest problem for me is that Phil's away in China, she's off for work and running around all over the world as well. If there's one key golden rule on any restoration project to manage it properly, is you need to be there.
Although St John's is a testament to its builders, its life as a parish church wasn't that much of a success. In all of its 134 years serving the community, all it carried out was just over 30 weddings, and all of the burials were carried out 2 miles away at its mother church, St Michael's. It might be said that in their zeal to build a church against the threat of Methodism, the people of Gamblesby let their religious fervour get the better of them, and they could have saved their money. Like many rural churches, time combined with society's lack of interest in religion and with a reducing population heralded their death knell, and this was true for St John's. In 2002, the church was made redundant and has stood empty for 8 years until Phil and Joanne decided to breathe new life into it. It's late autumn, and life has changed dramatically for our 2 restoration warriors. Although they finished the build, they're heavily in debt with huge loan repayments, and because of negative equity, they can't afford to sell their house in Chorley. And on top of that, Phil is still working in China, and Joanne is 6 months pregnant.
There's no doubt about it that church conversions provide some enormous challenges. Many of them are often architectural, but actually for Phil and Joanne, their biggest pressure has been financial. When I was last here in the summer, they borrowed yet another £25,000. I hope it was just enough to get this place finished. Morning.
Hey George, how you doing?
You've lost weight.
I have indeed.
Look at that, it's been dropping off you. That means you've been working hard. That's a good sign.
I haven't.
Yeah, because you've been busy doing other things.
How are you doing?
Funnily enough, hello you. You all right? It looks great from the outside.
Yep.
It looks fantastic. That looks great.
The building's brilliant.
That roof and that spire looks brilliant. How do you view it though? I mean, when you look at it, do you think, I love it? Or do you look at it thinking, that just cost too much money and nearly killed the project?
Up and down. Up and down. So, some days I arrive and look at it and think, wow, you know, we sort of took that out and imagine when the crane was here and all that business. But then other times I had to see the nail in the coffin.
Don't say that. That makes it sound really bad. Should we go inside and have a look?
Yeah,
okay.
lovely.
Look at that entrance hall.
I know.
Done.
Just about done. Don't touch anything because you'll get
Paint still there.
you'll get paint on you.
It looks great. Can I go through?
Please do.
Great.
15 months ago, what was a dilapidated, leaking church is now an elegant living and dining room.
Look at that. You've done it.
Just about.
You've done it. I'm actually, I shouldn't sound so cynical really, but I'm surprised. With all the financial pressure you've had, you wouldn't have got this far.
That's good.
I didn't think you were going to do it.
Good.
Well, we've had to, as I said, it required a lot of effort on our part, so the floor is one major achievement. I'm absolutely over the moon with this floor. It's superb. This was bought on eBay, a job lot, drove to London, brought it back, then I had to go through the process of scraping the bitumen off every single block, running it through a table saw twice, through a chop saw twice, 7,000 times.
And where the altar once stood has now been turned into a fantastic modern kitchen.
Wow, look at that.
Amazing.
Absolutely fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you think you come through that low single-storey height, and then bang, it just opens up to that roof space. It's beautiful. It's the real payoff for the entire building. I love it. It's fantastic. And that's just leaving the space alone.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, just not messing around with it. You didn't have to, because you've got the beautiful curve at the end. These windows have always been fantastic. Yeah. Really beautiful. Yeah. I mean, just having that stained glass in gives it that kind of sense of richness and sense of history, doesn't it? And I think the lighting's good. I think you've done it really well. Just those simple little uplighters and each individual bay up there, just gently washing that ceiling, which is a really nice thing to do, just to pick out all the architectural features of those fantastic timbers that are in the roof. But you are blessed with a beautiful building.
Yeah.
You are.
Upstairs in the 2 spare bedrooms, Phil and Joanne have continued to make the best use of space. And I'm really pleased to see they've put in glass panels where the new walls meet the old ones.
I love the glass panel in the corner there.
Yeah.
Which gives that little view down to the kitchen beneath. Quirky and unusual, but it's good. The 3 bits of glass work really well because you've got the vertical panel, giving the view into the double height space. You've then got a fairly standard skylight, but gets a lovely top light in there. And then you've got the little arched window there where you've covered it over the panel of glass. So it's like 3 sources of light.
And it gives lovely light in the evening from downstairs, that one. So
beautiful.
Nice.
Along the corridor, I'm dying to see what they've done to the master bedroom.
Oh, it's great. Oh, it's really lovely. It's really lovely.
Do you like it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, what a beautiful, romantic, snug, cosy room.
Yeah.
Right in the top of the building.
We've just tried to make it more of a wee apartment, you know, with its own entrance and its own
just to feel
its own little ensuite in there, which is great. You trip over this all the time, mate.
Absolutely. And bang your head on the top as well.
Bang your head on the top. Apart from that, it's great.
It's great, yeah.
Can I have a look in Phil's den?
Is
that all right?
Please, it's boys only.
Really? What, have you got a little mini bar up there?
Yep.
Really?
Oh my word! That's amazing!
Do you like it?
Brilliant! Oh, come on. I mean, that is absolutely fantastic.
But Phil and Joanne are in a conundrum. Their total rebuild cost stands at £170,000. That's £45,000 more than they budgeted for. The replacement spire and roof blew the budget, and financially they're stuck, unable to sell their house in Ch4. To finish the build, Phil has given up his university job, and with Joanne being pregnant, they've got some serious decisions to make.
What are you going to do?
We're probably going to have to sell the place. We've just simply spent too much money. We've spent far too much money. With the sacrifice we had to make with me stopping work, the fact that Joanne's going to be on maternity leave next year and she's going to have a reduced wage, we simply can't afford to service the debt that we now have riding on this place. So we've got a mortgage on this place, we've borrowed from family, and we also have a personal loan each and credit cards as well.
Ouch. There's no other options there, is there?
Actually, there is one other option. We're looking at selling it, but given the state of the market, one of the things I was talking, we had an estate agent round yesterday.
Right.
One of the things we were talking about was potentially letting it or holiday letting it. That way, there is a slim chance that if we could get it right and it added up, that in a few years' time we could knock enough off the mortgage that we could then get up here.
Despite Phil and Joanne's problems throughout this build, the local community have helped them to finish the project. Today, they've come to celebrate this restoration.
I went to Sunday school here and I was one of the organists. I think they've done a good job. I think it's very nice.
You were the last vicar of this
last vicar of this church, yeah. It's sad that we can't use it as a church, but great that it's going to still be, well, it still looks like as part of the community. It's no doubt been really well done.
Throughout my research into the history of St John's, it was fascinating to discover that the local community were the driving force in getting it built in the first place. As custodians of the church, I want Phil and Joanne to remember that history so that one day they can pass it on to future generations.
So Phil and Joanne, a little present for you.
Excellent.
A book.
Yay!
The history of the building. And actually, more importantly, not just the history of the building, but the history of your journey with the building as well.
Wow.
All the history of the building, all the drawings we could find, any maps about its history, the whole story of it, even being an ancient site before the church even turned up.
Wow, look at that.
All started.
Oh my goodness.
Remember that day, pushing the caravan? You did it. Well done.
Cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Cheers, thank you.
Fantastic. I think a round of applause for that. Don't you think? They saved the building. Hey! But I think we should do a huge toast to Phil and Joanne because I think they have saved the building. And hopefully it'll stand here for at least another couple of 100 years. To Phil and Joanne.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
What Phil and Joanne have done here is quite incredible. They've proven that restoration is definitely not for the faint-hearted. They've been under the most unbelievable financial pressure. I just hope that they can sell their existing property, clear some debts, and move into this church because they deserve it.